Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you to the Clarkdale Mayoral Candidate Forum, which will be on the August 4th primary ballot. Our forum is being hosted by the League of Women Voters Greater Verde Valley. My name is Mary Shaquin, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters and your moderator for this forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization which envisions a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. In these new times, we do not have an audience, but Verde Valley TV is videotaping this forum. The video will play on Cable 1, Channel 56, Suddenlink Channel 2, and the Verde Valley TV YouTube channel, as well as other social media outlets and websites. The purpose of this forum is for the audience to get to hear from the candidates on why they want to be mayor for the town of Clarkdale. Over the last several weeks, we have solicited and gathered questions via email from the public to present to the candidates. The goal for the forum is fairness, civility, and engagement. Our timekeeper for today's forum is Kevin Cook. Thank you, Kevin. His role is to keep us all on time. He has 3 signs, a 1-minute sign, a 30-second sign, and a stop sign. He will raise the 1-minute sign, then the 30-second sign, and then finally the stop sign. Time limits on responses to questions will be strictly observed. I, as the moderator, will have the responsibility for enforcing time limits. We ask 4 things of our candidates: be respectful of each other's point of view, speak your mind freely, do not engage in personal attacks, and do not interrupt one another. Our candidates for Mayor of Clarkdale in alphabetical order are Robin Prudhomme Bauer and Doug Von Goseck. The forum will consist of 3 parts. Part 1 will include opening remarks and the lead question. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for introductory remarks, and then this will be followed by 3 minutes to respond to the League of Women Voters Greater Verde Valley question. Part 2 consists of questions from the community. Candidates will have 2 minutes to address each question, depending on the number of issues to be covered and the time available. We received more than 50 questions in response to our requests. I invite the community to contact the candidates directly if your questions are not answered or you would like further information. Part 3 is then the closing remarks, where each candidate will have 2 minutes to share their final remarks on why they wish to be mayor of Clarkdale. We will begin now with our opening statements, which again are for 3 minutes. The candidates have prepared these obviously ahead of time. We will begin with Doug Von Goseck. Doug?
Thank you, Mary, and thank you to the League of Women Voters of Greater Verde Valley. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate all the work you do all over the Verde Valley to bring candidates out and let the people hear what we're all about.
Thank you.
My name's Doug Von Goseck, and I've been a resident of Arizona for 72 years, a resident of the Verde Valley for 42 of those years, and a resident of Clarkdale for 32 of those. I've also been the mayor of Clarkdale for the last 16 years. And for the last 8 years, I've been the executive director of the Verde River Institute, which is devoted to defining the science of the Verde River, understanding its threats, and proposing new strategies that can continue to, so that it can continue to flow. I've been a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, where I piloted C-130 tactical cargo aircraft during the Vietnam conflict. And I've been in business in the Verde Valley for about 30 years, one way or another. I was an insurance agent here in Cottonwood. Then I was a retailer up in Jerome for about 10 years, and then a manufacturer in Clarkdale, primarily serving the tourism industry. So I understand tourism pretty well from all of those kinds of exposures. But my proudest and most rewarding accomplishment ever in my life has been being the mayor of Clarkdale. It's an incredible town to work for and to help guide to the future. It's just something that I think I never thought that I would be in politics in this way, but now that I have been for 16 years, I can't imagine doing anything anything else or any better way to serve your community. During that 16 years, the town of Clarkdale has accomplished a tremendous number of things. It has helped make Verde River conservation a central consideration in all of the Verde Valley and all of the state of Arizona, as a matter of fact. And Clarkdale's been central in that effort to bring creative recreation into the Verde River, to make sure that the Verde River continues to flow and that it then adds to the economy of the Verde Valley. So I'm proud of Clarkdale for that, and I continue to work toward that even today. Clarkdale's been a leader in water conservation. Since we purchased the water company in the Verde Valley, we have reduced our consumption of water from 140 gallons per person per day to 65, makes us a leader in that. We've built and maintained the best wastewater treatment plant in the Verde Valley and the best water delivery system in the Verde Valley. And we continue to work really hard on all of our infrastructure in Clarkdale. And I want to help make Clarkdale a leader in all of these things in the future. And so that's why I'm running for mayor.
Thank you, Doug. Robin.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Greater Verde Valley, for holding this forum. I'm excited to be here today. Good afternoon. My name is Robin Prudhomme Bauer, your neighbor, a 23-year resident of Clarkdale, a Clarkdale business owner, and candidate for mayor of Clarkdale. I want to be mayor because I care about Clarkdale, and I cherish Clarkdale's small town spirit. Right now, we need to make sure that we are doing okay during the COVID-19 pandemic and that all of our neighbors are safe and healthy. All Clarkdalians need to have access to the services necessary to support them as we weather this pandemic. We will get through this, and when we do, I, as your mayor, will work to preserve Clarkdale's small-town community spirit, Clarkdale's history, and the natural environment of the Verde River and the mountains that surround Clarkdale. We need to preserve our small-town attitude while we plan to provide jobs, schools, and housing opportunities for all families who live here and want to live here. That same Clarkdale spirit should be extended to the businesses that want to expand here and want to come to Clarkdale with the jobs that will sustain us. To me, this is the Clarkdale we want. My priorities will focus on ensuring that we have a fiscally prudent town government, efficiently providing services for the residents with a strong and engaged staff. Safe and attainable housing for all families is very important to me. Building a strong and resilient economy that can survive the challenges with living wage jobs and an increased tax base. More support to existing and new businesses in areas such as small manufacturing, home-based businesses, our wine industry, recreation, and the retail outlets that will support residents and tourists. These are very important for me. I also want to see improved relationships with Yavapai College in Clarkdale. And the thought of developing programs for food sharing through our community, maybe through community gardens and a town's farmer market, is very important for food security. My big priority is to continue the dedication to the preservation of our natural resources, very important. The arts, which is important to my heart, our history and our community events, and keeping Clarkdale a small town. I am a leader who can work with the residents and businesses to build a safer, stronger, more connected, and caring Clarkdale. I have the proven skills to do this through my years, many years of community involvement, not only in Clarkdale, the Verde Valley, and statewide. 23 years ago, my husband and I chose to move to Clarkdale, not only because of my family, but because Clarkdale has a very special place in my heart.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Our first question is provided by the League of Women Voters, Greater Verde Valley. The candidates will have 3 minutes to respond, and they were also provided this question ahead of time to prepare. We will begin with Robin on this question. What is your perspective on racial equity and community policing as related to Clarkdale and the Verde Valley? As food for thought, we also provided 4 background questions. They are, how would you describe the relationship between local police and police of color in Clarkdale and the Verde Valley? What actions will you take to ensure police treat people equitably? What would be your response to evidence of wrongdoing? And finally, how do you think citizens in Clarkdale can act locally and positively to address the serious issue of racial equity? Robin?
Thank you very much for that question. What a thought-provoking question that was given to us today, and it's very timely right now. But as I begin my comments, I wanted to say that I support efforts at all levels of government to enact police reforms that would include looking at use of force, police accountability, racial profiling, data collection and training. We cannot continue to have this level of violence happening, and we need to make some dramatic changes in policing. But I really want to focus on Clarkdale. I had the wonderful opportunity to attend Clarkdale's first class of the Citizen Police Academy, even though we were unable to complete it because of the COVID-19 shutdown. What I did come away with was that Clarkdale's police department practices very good community policing. They like the people in Clarkdale. They make efforts to know them. They have good ethical standards in how they deal with situations. They look at what's morally right, good and proper, and they do use de-escalation tactics for all their situations. I'm very impressed with that. And they go above and beyond the call of duty. They assist each other as needed. We have great mutual aid between our neighboring communities. And they do get good training, ongoing training, and particularly training in mental health issues and how to offer resources for somebody who would need it. Those are very important to me. And they like each other. That was great. Clarkdale is very lucky to have the police department we do. Can they and we in Clarkdale do more? I think absolutely yes. I think we could look at some questions that I have are, what are the processes used to review and evaluate our police actions? Do they consider how the actions was handled? How the actions were handled, their reaction to the people involved, what could they have done differently, and was the outcome acceptable? Excuse me. Another question I have is, what is the process used to hold each other accountable for their actions in the field? If there is something done incorrectly, how is that reported? How is that handled? What is the process in the community for residents to be able to raise concerns or problems with an officer, or how police officers in Clarkdale carry out their duties? I think these are just questions for us to have discussions and find out how that is and effectively communicate that to our residents. We have a strong community-oriented police department, and we can have even a better police department with more listening, talking, and working together to keep Clarkdale residents safe.
Thank you. Doug?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Clarkdale's been practicing community policing for almost 20 years, and it's done an incredible job of making sure that the people in the community know the officers that are patrolling those areas. We assign each officer to a quadrant of Clarkdale, and they patrol that area continually for quite a period of time, and then we rotate our officers through there so that our townspeople all know each of the officers very well. They grow to trust them, and the officers understand very well what each of the people's problems are in those neighborhoods. They know what's normal in that neighborhood, and they know what's not normal, and so that allows them to step in and investigate things that they think might be a little out of place. Clarkdale's never had a discrimination claim. And I think that speaks volumes about who we've had in our chief of police positions. I was on the panel that selected Randy as our police chief, and what we were looking for at the time was somebody that understood community, number one, who understood how community policing worked and exactly what was going to be necessary in order to keep the trust of the people that live here. And Randy does an incredible job of that. We are in Clarkdale about 80% Caucasian white. We're about 10% each Native American and Hispanic. And none of those ethnic groups has ever complained to any degree in Cottonwood about police harassment or any of those things. So we're very lucky in that regard. That said, as Robin said, I think we're in an area or an era where we really need to be paying very close attention to those things. We do that very well through the council, and by what I do is I have discussions with the police chief on a regular basis, and generally one or two anytime anything like this that's going on right now comes up, because I think it's something that is incredibly important, that we do not have discrimination in our town, that we do not use excessive force in our town, and that the methods and strategies that we use on an arrest are appropriate to the crime that's involved. I trust our police force tremendously. They've never given me the reason not to trust them, but if they ever did, I think it would involve me and the chief sitting down with the town manager and discussing that at length, and then if it has to, it can go to the boards and commissions that are appropriate for that kind of an action. Yeah, so great people. I was very proud of Clarkdale the first time we had an officer involved shooting and death in Clarkdale. We had a public meeting. People came to that meeting and were very respectful, both of the officer and the victim in that crime. And I think that spoke volumes again about community policing in our town.
Great. Thank you, Doug. As a reminder, all of the next questions will be 2-minute responses. Gotcha. And we'll start with you, Doug, on this next question.
Okay.
Cities and towns throughout the Verde Valley have a tradition of working together in such endeavors as the Verde Valley Regional Economic Organization, VV-RIO, Northern Arizona Council of Governments, NACOG, and the Arizona League of Cities and Towns, just to cite a few examples. Do you see a shared vision for the cities and towns of the Verde Valley in 2020? If so, please describe that shared vision.
Yeah, there are a lot of organizations that we all belong to, all of the various municipalities in the Verde Valley, and in addition, of course, to the League of Cities and Towns, where, by the way, I was the president of the League of Arizona Cities and Towns for 3 years, and I'm still on the executive committee. That organization ties all 92 of the incorporated communities in Arizona together and gives legal advice, advice about things like what's going on right now. How do the mask ordinances work? Okay. How does COVID-19 affect each of us, and how are we going to respond to it? How does community policing work? The League of Cities and Towns is very active in all of those. We also have the Verde Front, which I have reckoned to be the most effective collaborative effort I've ever seen in politics and in governance in Arizona. Verde Front looks at the Verde River, recreation and economic development of each of the communities based on a healthy Verde River and a healthy environment. And every one of the communities is very active in the Verde Front. We have a mayors and managers meeting every quarter in the Verde Valley, where all of the mayors and all of the city managers meet and discuss what's going on in each of our communities. In addition to that, in Yavapai County, we have the county mayors, managers, chairman of the Yavapai Apache Nation, and all of the supervisors from Yavapai County belong to that organization. And that way, we can all understand what each of our challenges is and what we're doing to work on those challenges effectively. And every one of those things is really important to every city and town in the Verde Valley and in Arizona. And so I'm proud that Clarkdale generally takes a leadership position in those things.
Great. Thank you. Robin.
Thank you. A shared vision. The Verde Valley, since I moved here many years ago, I have always seemed to be a very collaborative region on issues that are important to us. currently I am the chair of VV Rio, the Verde Valley Regional Economic Organization, which is a very collaborative organization that works on economic development and support to businesses throughout the region. That's been extremely important. Part of these other wonderful organizations like Verde Front, like the mayors and managers gathering together, the intergovernmental groups of the different city and town councils and the like. Working together is really important to the Valley. We have many issues that we are working on together, things that I think are coming to the forefront because of the pandemic is housing. We know that was a critical issue before the pandemic came forward and came about, but housing is still going to be here when we get through the other side. It might look different. And working together with each one of our communities, finding out what the needs are of the employees, the people who want to live here, so that we have safe and attainable housing for all who want to live in the Verde Valley is really important. Shared vision. If we don't have a shared vision, we don't make it happen in this region. We're too small. Working together, we have much more power working together. And it's important that Clarkdale is always at the table. We are at the table. We work, we have great strengths we bring to the table, and we can have even more leadership to the future.
Thank you. The next question. We recognize that you have lived in Clarkdale long enough to know there are things you like and things you would change about living here. Obviously, you have shared some of your views during the campaign, so we would like you to probe a little further. When did you begin living in Clarkdale, and what brought you here? What 3 things do you like best about living in Clarkdale? What 3 things would you like to change about Clarkdale, and why? Robin, you're up.
In 2 minutes, that's a hard question. No, it's not. I've lived in Clarkdale 23 years. We came here in a couple reasons. One is my family was here, had owned a business here that brought them here. But what brought us here is we found that Clarkdale had a very unique sense of place here. It's a very welcoming community. That's one of the things I like very much about it. I love being able to walk down the street and see people I know and have a conversation and just really get to know what's going on and take the time to do that. I love that we live in a beautiful natural place with mountains and a river that we can get out and hike, and that we can have picnics, go down the river, do things that are outdoors. That is very important to Clarkdale. To me, some of the concerns I have about Clarkdale is that for here, one of the concerns has been that we have not always been a community that has been supportive or welcoming of business being in our community. I think we can do better of that. We've worked on that. We need to continue work on that. Clarkdale is not a bedroom community. Clarkdale's roots comes from being a community of work, play, and living here. So it is a community of workers. That's what our history is about, whether it was the smelter history or the history of the people who lived in the region before that. Those are the things I'd like to see changed and worked on, and have a better relationship with our college, in our community. What can we do together? Those are the areas that I think we can really push ourselves forward.
Thank you, Robin. Doug.
Yeah, it's hard to trim it down to 3
I know.
things that you really like. And it's really almost hard to think of 3 things that I would like to change. There are some things that we could fine tune, but I'm a naturalist, and so I love the dark skies. I think that's incredibly important to people's just their psyche and their well-being, to look up and see the Milky Way whenever they want to. In Clarkdale, because of our lighting codes and other things that have protected our night skies, have been that's really important to me. Obviously, the Verde River is where my heart lies, along with the community of Clarkdale. And the word community means something in Clarkdale. Clarkdale is a community of people that work together, who know each other, who come together in some of the best Norman Rockwell events that you've ever seen anywhere in the country. Our old-fashioned 4th of July will not take place this year because of COVID-19, and it's been a tragedy to see that slip out of the running for this year. But all of those events, the concerts in the park, the 4th of July, the parades that we have are all just pure Clarkdale. I would like to see better economic development. It's one of our goals with the town council, and has been for as long as I've been mayor, to continue to build economic development. We need to have sales tax coming in to fund what we do in our town, to deliver services. And we've got to work harder on our downtown area. That's one of our great assets. But also to have that coordinated with the 89A corridor and the Broadway corridor at the same time. I think that continuing to have slow, measured growth in Clarkdale is important, and I think one of the things that I maybe not want to change but want to make sure continues is we have very smart, measured growth in the future.
Great, thank you. Next, the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic has created change in many facets of our daily lives. What do you see as the new normal in your community? Do you expect things to return to pre-COVID-19 reality? Are there changes that have become increasingly apparent to you as a result of this pandemic? What are 2 or 3 of these changes, and how will you address them? And Doug, you're up first.
Yeah, this is something that really occupies about half my time these days. And it would, whether I were the mayor or not. I think this is, I think sociologically, scientifically, this is one of the most tragic times that I've ever seen in the United States of America. It's one of the biggest challenges that I've ever seen for our communities, for our businesses, for our schools, for our hospitals, for our faith-based organizations. There is no sector of Clarkdale or any other community that's not touched by COVID-19. One of the things that I'm working on now, and that I've been working on just today, is to bring people from all of those sectors together and discuss what has changed about their particular thing. How are we delivering services as governments? How are we going to have our kids educated in the future? Who gets to ride a school bus, and how? How do you handle the additional traffic because you can't ride school buses? All of those things, along with how the hospitals coordinate, how manufacturing supply chains come to fruition, have to change in the future. And I think now is the time to do it. I do not foresee a post-COVID world where we all go back to what we've been doing. I see us settling into a new normal that accommodates, and maybe not accommodates the word, but that can continue to operate in an effective, economical way, in spite of the fact that we're going to have pandemics. This is not the only pandemic we're going to be through. This is only the first. And I think it's the most important job of the town right now, and of the state of Arizona and of our country, to learn how we're going to operate in that post-COVID new reality that's going to include others like it.
Thank you. Robin.
I think, Doug, you're absolutely right. COVID-19 has created a whole new world for us, when we're still asking a lot of questions about that. It's definitely the new normal. We are not going to go back to what we were pre-COVID-19. Too many things have come forward, and we realize a lot of things that need to happen in Clarkdale. First, we have to always make sure that our residents are safe and healthy. And in that, things like come to my mind are our food security situation. How do we ensure that everybody in Clarkdale has access to being able to have the food that they need or they want? Are we making sure that everybody is aware of the services that they might need? Right now, mental health issues are just skyrocketing. We are seeing more domestic violence issues. We are seeing more just general, I need to get outside, get back to my normal life kind of things. We need to say, are those things happening here in Clarkdale? How are we giving access to our residents for that? In addition to that, again, some of the things around our housing and our health care and our jobs and how we going to care for our children when they can't go to school like they used to go to school. Do we have adequate child care for all of them? Those are the things that I but talk to other people about. And one of the things, and this is just an infrastructure thing for me, is high-speed internet broadband capacity. We are going to need it. We need it as a major infrastructure, just like we have roads, water, wastewater, and that. This is a new infrastructure that's required for us to continue to connect and communicate effectively.
Thank you, Robin. And Robin, you're up next on this question.
Okay.
What lessons have you learned from the global pandemic that makes you an effective leader for the town of Clarkdale?
Oh, what lessons? Oh my. What lessons? The lessons I have learned is that we have to make sure that we are finding effective and new ways that we can connect to each other. That it's the ways of, well, this piece of paper comes in the mail, it tells everybody what's going on. Are there other ways we can connect with people? Finding ways that we can talk about the issues of our community, whether it's through Zoom, which seems to be the word of the day, or it's through social distancing roundtables where everybody is sitting 6 feet apart. How do we talk to each other? How do we have that same kind of Clarkdale spirit? Those are the lessons that came today. How are we going to gather together when we can't gather in the ways we used to? It's really making us rethink of everything we do differently. How do we have our town meetings? How do we have council meetings? How do we have meetings of boards and commissions? They're just the questions I begin to ask and start to explore what are the different ways we can do. So those are the lessons I've learned, is not to be complacent anymore.
Thank you. Doug.
Yes, not just COVID, not just pandemics, but so many of today's challenges are completely unpredictable. Mm-hmm. Nobody would have predicted any of the results of having a pandemic in our country. Nobody would have predicted that our local restaurants might close down. Some that had been open for 20 or 30 years are now closed in Clarkdale. Nobody would have predicted any of the economic development impact that we've seen, and the housing impact, and every other thing that affects life in Clarkdale and in Arizona and the Verde Valley. And what I've learned as I have been the mayor has just been strengthened by this particular episode, and that is the three things that you've got to take into account with anything that happens are creativity, adaptability, and sustainability. And if you're creative in your solutions, if you are not tied to what has worked or not worked in the past, if you're not quite so tied to all of those conventional things, and if you're not adaptable, if you can't look at COVID-19 or any other challenge and say, how are we going to adapt to that? How are we going to come out on the other side and be in good shape? We did it during the Great Recession. We're doing it now with COVID, and we'll continue to do that with anything that comes up in Clarkdale in the future. Sustainability is incredibly important when you look at any of these strategies that you're going to employ in order to get through it. If you're not sustainable, it's going to be a very expensive solution. It's going to be a solution that has to have constant intervention, and you can't really do that and get away with it on the budget of a small town like Clarkdale. So you've got to build sustainability into every strategy and every decision that you make. And those things have just been strengthened immensely because of this experiment that's going on right now in our culture.
Great, thank you. The Verde River is considered one of our community's greatest assets. What will you do to ensure that the Verde River is protected, both from damaging development within the valley, as well as from over-extraction upstream that could reduce its flow? Doug, you're up first.
Yeah, so I have given this some thought.
Really?
Yeah, this is what I live and breathe. So the Verde River is just the most unbelievable treasure that a town could have. We're the first town on the Verde River. We're the first center of any population on the Verde River. And we're about 45 miles down from the headwaters. There is a bit of a misconception that what happens in the headwaters and how the extraction up there is the big threat to the Verde River. And not to minimize it, but the first 24 miles of the river would be affected by increased extraction of water from the headwaters. But what we're doing here in the Verde Valley and the rest of the watershed actually can do more damage to the river than they can possibly do in the headwaters area in Prescott and Prescott Valley. What we're doing now is we are modeling in Clarkdale good water behavior. As I said in my introduction, we now are using less than half of the water per capita that we used before the private water company was purchased. We're neck and neck all the time with Payson as far as being the best, most efficient user of water in Arizona. We are looking at innovative new ways to treat and either recharge or reuse our treated effluent, which is incredibly important. So safeguarding our groundwater, our aquifers, is number one for Clarkdale, and it needs to be number one for the Verde Valley. Every drop of water in the Verde River is discharging from our groundwater aquifers, and every drop of water that are used from those aquifers depletes the Verde River by that amount. So the number one job is to safeguard your groundwater aquifers, and by doing so, you safeguard the Verde River. The biggest strategy is make the Verde River an economic center for the Verde Valley, and then people will be willing to save it.
Thank you. Robin.
Right. Doug is so very much knowledgeable around the river. As he said, he loves the river. I absolutely think the river is extremely important to Clarkdale. It's our icon. It's what gives us our good sense of our place. I want to see it continue to flow. I want to see it protected in the ways that we have worked on it over these many years, and will continue to work on it. It is important to us because of our natural environment, the economy around us, as a part of the economy around us, not the whole economy. Safeguarding our groundwater is extremely important to me. I think about that all the time. One of the biggest issues is that for development, the laws in the state of Arizona are so minimal, I say, for the rural areas that really affects our capacity to put that even in a part of our discussion in most of the case when we're doing planning decisions. Safeguarding our groundwater, as I said, is really important. I think we can do a little bit more there. Many of us are on wells in Clarkdale. I'd like to find ways for us to encourage those who are on a well, and I'm on a well, so I say this, is to get us off the well and into the system so we have a better understanding of the real use, the amount of use of water that we're all doing. I take efforts in my own home to really conserve water. But I want to find a way that I can be a part of making the solution of continuing what we've already set forward as a good conservation path in Clarkdale.
Thank you. And you have led perfectly into my next question. Exempt wells, less than 35 gallons per minute, are drilled in the foothills and other areas in Clarkdale. Some residents need to re-drill their wells deeper in order to access water. There are no fire hydrants in these areas. What are your views about how the town of Clarkdale could build water and sewer lines to reclaim this precious resource and provide adequate fire protection?
Well, I'm not a master in fire protection and drilling and all of that. I just have some just general comments about that, and it goes back to my other one. There are many of us who are on wells that are easily accessible to the current system. So finding ways to get us into the system that values both the value of the well that those people bought into, plus also their community responsibility of the shared water. I think we tried to get as many of us off the well so that for those who live in the foothills, and that's always going to be a challenge, to be able to get them into the system easily, that they might have better success with having the wells not go dry, and try to discourage well development and have as many people and as many businesses as possible in the system and not outside of the system. I'm not an expert on fire suppression or prevention with wells and fire hydrants, so it's very hard for me to speak about that. That doesn't mean I can't learn about that.
Great, thank you. Doug?
Yeah, this is one of those really big questions in Clarkdale, in fact, everywhere in rural Arizona. The cost of serving an unserved population in Clarkdale is generally prohibited. I'm on a well also, and if Clarkdale were to serve my house with water or wastewater, either one, it would probably cost them in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $50,000 just to serve my house. They're never going to make that up. And the amount of water that you recapture because of it, or the reduction in the amount of water that's being used, probably is not justified by those kinds of expenses. We do have a plan in Clarkdale that has pictures of the future of wastewater collection and of water delivery in Clarkdale. And that plan depends to a great extent on where developers decide to develop. We can then impose upon the developer the necessity to extend those water lines to where they finally do reach Robin's house or possibly even my house. And those kinds of plans are essential to everything. One of the big things that we're working on right now is serving especially sewer wastewater, because if we can recapture that wastewater from those homes instead of just putting it into a septic system where it's lost forever, that water basically evaporates. Very little of it actually percolates into the groundwater. And we want to recapture that wastewater so that we can clean it up to its maximum level and then use it to recharge the aquifer or to supplant other uses of water like parks and grass and things like that with that wastewater instead of using potable water on them. So those are all plans that we have in our major planning for water and wastewater in Clarkdale, and that plan will be realized over time with slow measured growth again.
Great, thank you. Doug, what steps will you take to create and ensure a local government that is more inclusive of Spanish-speaking individuals and racial diversity within Clarkdale?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I say, about 10% of our population, I think it's 9 or so, is Hispanic. We are always working with 2 of our major communities in Clarkdale that are predominantly Hispanic, are the Patio Park subdivision at the end of Broadway and Centerville, which was actually one of the very first communities in Arizona. Both of those are majority Hispanic areas, and what we have done using funds from Northern Arizona Council of Governments, NACOG, and federal money is put it into those neighborhoods to improve the streets, improve the gutters, the street lights, all of those things which make those communities more equitable with all of the other parts of Clarkdale. I've never seen racial discrimination in Clarkdale on any level that really needs a tremendous amount of attention. However, we always do pay attention to it, and you can look at our police force, we can look at our town staff, you can look at every other committee and organization in the town admires and works well with the Hispanic community. So I would just like to continue to do that and understand that that part of our culture is a really important part. The food, the how Hispanic communities work as a community is instructive for, I think, everybody. And we'd like to see more of that in Clarkdale. But I think we're doing a very good job in Clarkdale of honoring those communities and those people. And I want to continue to do that.
Great, thank you. Robin.
Thank you. To me, community is all about getting to know each other and what their needs and how they want to be involved in their community. And I think one of the things, our local government has done a very good job of doing some of the infrastructure things in our communities with roads and gutters and things like that. Where we need to maybe work a little bit harder is having more dialogue with those communities, gatherings with those communities, and find out how they want to get involved in their area that they live in, no matter if it's in Patio Park or it's in Centerville or even the Clarkdale community of the Yavapai Apache Nation, which is a big part of Clarkdale. How do they want to be, how can we work with them as a government to assist things happening in those areas? I was just down in Patio Park the other day. They have a wonderful little park down there, talking to some of the people who live in that area, and we were devised. They want to do something in their park. They want to clean it up. It needs some refreshing. They want to do things down there. How do we make that happen? How do we find out what are some of the things they might want in that park? In terms of the Yavapai Apache Nation, one of the things that I think would be an intriguing idea is how maybe would we have a member of that community, because we know it's a nation of itself, be a part of our town government discussions more ongoing. Maybe as an advisor that comes and sits as part of our council meetings or our boards and commissions, so that we're communicating back and forth what is going on in that community. That might be something that we can work on together, and vice versa. So I thought it was an intriguing idea to think about, is to have that happen. Communication, talking to each other, listening, and trying to get it done is to me how we keep are respectful of of the diversity of our community.
Thank you. The subtitle of Clarkdale's 2012 General Plan is Instilling a Culture of Sustainability. How do you describe the town's culture of sustainability today? What are your priorities for continuously improving sustainability in Clarkdale? And what is your vision for sustainability in Clarkdale? Robin?
I think Clarkdale overall has done very good in our environmental sustainability. We have, as Doug has described, what the efforts we have in terms of water conservation, the state-of-the-art wastewater plant. We have a very big number of houses in Clarkdale that use solar, and we promote solar. We have promoted xeriscaping, or the kind of landscaping that's appropriate in Clarkdale. We've done a really good job in that area. Sustainability to me is a lot more than just our environmental sustainability. One of the legs of sustainability is food sustainability. Are we a food desert? Are there things, I think we are in some ways a food desert. We don't have a grocery store. We don't have a community garden. We don't have a farmer's market. Things that we need to make sure that when we have another crisis, whether it's a pandemic or something natural, that we can take care of ourselves with a good, solid food source, that we have food that everybody can get to quickly, so we don't have to worry about transportation in or the supply chain of getting that here. That to me is another part of our sustainability that we need to really focus in on in Clarkdale, to make sure that everybody is getting a good supply of food, different foods for their daily needs.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Doug.
Yeah, sustainability is a big issue for Clarkdale. It's something that we've paid a lot of attention to in the last 16 years. You know, sustainability is kind of defined as operating in a way today that doesn't hamper your grandchildren's ability to operate just as well as we have. And that's important from a water standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, but it's also important from a development standpoint and an economic development standpoint. I've noticed that people are starting to get turned on to the fact that constantly doing things in economic development that don't make economic sense is not an appropriate strategy for economic development. And you've got to be able to, when you're considering economic development or redevelopment of the downtown area even, how does that change that you're making get perpetuated? Does it make sense for the future businesses and people that are going to be utilizing those businesses and those buildings? If it doesn't, and you've got to constantly go in and intercede in that system, that's not a sustainable solution. You've got to build in solutions that make sense, that are naturally and kind of organically economical, and that people will want to continue to sustain in the future. That's what we build into every decision that we make in Clarkdale, and every council decision thinks about that as we make those decisions. You know, I think it might be time to take a look at the sustainability park that Clarkdale designed years ago and re-examine that plan to see what parts of it might be doable in the future for Clarkdale and which ones will make sense. I just get the impression that because of COVID-19 and other major challenges like this, having those kinds of things in the town would make us stand out in the future and have a healthier town than we would otherwise have.
Okay, thank you. The next question. What do you see as the 3 most important issues facing public education in the communities of the Verde Valley? How do you propose to address the issues you have identified in your role as mayor of Clarkdale?
Yeah, well, as I said, I think earlier on today, how educational services are going to be delivered in Clarkdale, whether it's Yavapai College or Clarkdale Jerome School, is really still up in the air. Mm-hmm. We don't know how kids are going to get to school. We don't know how they're going to be seated in the classrooms. We don't know where they're going to eat their lunch. These are all things that we're meeting with Danny Brown from the Clarkdale Jerome School, and we're meeting with Yavapai College to understand what their needs are going to be and how Clarkdale can contribute its expertise and resources to make sure that healthy education continues to be delivered. COVID-19 is the big challenge right now for all of them. I'm sure that none of those people on those school boards ever thought that they would be sitting around the table trying to decide how many kids we can get in a school bus and how we can take that number of kids to school and what's going to happen at school because of the fact that now more parents are taking kids themselves, and the town now has got to be in there looking at how that can be done safely. Everything about education is going to change. And I think that, again, creativity, adaptability, and sustainability are going to have to be the first three things that everybody looks at to make planning for that future. And what we're doing now, as I also said before, trying to get all of those sectors together, including education, manufacturing, retail, government, faith-based organizations, to understand how we're going to move into the future in light of pandemics like COVID-19. And I think that kind of planning is something that's urgent and will have to be done before we get out of the fall resurgence of this thing, which could be even worse than what we are in today. Right in the middle of the school year. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. Robin.
The issues for public education, I'm sure, have got to be daunting. Because this is not what educators do. They don't have to think about usually how they're going to teach kids today. I think one of the biggest issues outside of the logistics of all of this is what are we going to do as a community to take care of children whose parents have to work full time and they can only go to school a half day? How are we going to make sure those kids are safe? That's one of the discussions. How are we going to make sure that we're going to have the internet connectivity that we need so that child or that person going to Yavapai College can take an online course to further their education, to make sure they're getting educated in the ways that they need to be, whether they're a first grader or whether there's somebody trying to fill out a degree. Those are the challenges and the issues that we have that we're thinking about right now. There are some efforts going on. What Doug has talked about is how you deal with the whole system there. I look at efforts of how do we get our broadband in there? How do we look at shorter classes at Yavapai College for certificate programs so that people can be skilled in the jobs of today and tomorrow quickly as they come back or as they get created in our community, let's put it that way. And how do we change that environment? We have a physical plant, but we need to have the connectivity infrastructure in so that we can make sure that everybody is getting the education they need to have a good job, be able to live in their community in a good and safe way.
Thank you. The cost of climate disaster far outweighs the cost of preparing for climate change. Climate disaster includes fire danger, mega drought affecting food growth, hotter temperatures, heat island effects, heat-related deaths, drops in rangeland productivity by 80%, and now mosquitoes present every year. How will your leadership champion solutions for climate crisis in our community? What programs are you working on or proposing to address community needs in relation to climate that can be implemented? How will you encourage and engage citizens to reduce consumption of materials and energy?
2 minutes to change the climate in Clarkdale. We've done some things that I've been involved with in terms of being on the design review board. We've looked at how, from the perspective of multifamily housing and businesses, how are they using materials that are more friendly to the climate so that you don't have to have big heating and cooling systems, that you can use the natural way of building to keep those buildings environmentally good for the community. Our landscaping work, where we've asked people to, builders and developers, to look at how they landscape to collect some of the runoff so that it can water the plants and the natural environment around there, or keep it a natural environment and not have to put in not to put in grasses and things that are not beneficial to Clarkdale. So we've done a lot of really good work in that area. We're working on, and I think we can do more into the connectivity of our walking paths, our trails and stuff like that, so that you're not so dependent on cars. Bike paths, walking paths, things like that, so we connect not just through our town but also to our neighboring communities. And I know there's a good effort underway for all of that. Making us a more walkable community helps lessen our need to have cars and buses and things that contribute to our climate change. We need to always make sure that we have clean air and we have clean water. And we need to look at ways that we're contributing to not having any degradation of those elements in our community.
Thank you. Doug.
So climate change is one of those challenges for the future that's so incredibly complex, and at the same time is really something that needs to be looked at on a national, worldwide, statewide, countywide, regional-wide aspect. So each of the things about climate change, whether it's drought or whether it's the nighttime temperatures or the lack of rain or rain at the wrong time or recharge of our aquifers, is really a regional problem or a statewide, national, or worldwide problem. One of the things I think Clarkdale can do that would really help is to provide leadership to the rest of the Verde Valley and to the rest of the state, and be there at all of those panels and all of those discussions and be modeling how good climate change behavior works. That's something that we've done a really good job of. We've worked hard on our water, our wastewater, our recharging, our aquifers. We've worked hard on things like having development put in low albedo surfaces. That means, or high albedo, I'm sorry. High albedo surface is one that reflects sunlight, that doesn't heat up everything and cause that heat island effect. We have worked very hard on our commercial plant codes so that people are planting the right kinds of codes that don't use as much water. And in fact, the goal is for them to use no additional water to the natural rainfall. So all of those kinds of things I think can be done. Each of those strategies needs to be employed by a small town like Clarkdale, but to be really effective, it's leadership that we're going to have to supply to the state and to the nation, and show them how small towns and all other towns can operate effectively and responsibly by being creative, adaptive, and sustainable.
Thank you. Okay, Doug. The current pandemic has made us all more aware of the relationship between virus transmission and the processing of wild and factory farm animals for their meat. At the same time, access to quality/healthy food, especially for the most vulnerable, has become even more difficult. What role can town government play in helping residents make safe, sustainable food choices, either by ordinance or by example?
Yeah, probably by ordinance, not very much. We're very restricted about the kinds of ordinances that we can put in that might interfere with things that the FDA does, or any of the other state organizations that also have the responsibility, like ADEQ and others, to write those ordinances. So we can't really step on those lines. But what we can do is we can make sure that we continue to have the water for local farming. I think local farming is incredibly important from a number of standpoints, including climate change, in that it uses less water, it uses less transportation. Everything about local farming is better, almost. So I would rather have a nice fresh ear of corn from Camp Verde than to buy something from Chile that I buy at Costco, It didn't have to be shipped all the way here. It's fresher, it tastes better, and it's a locally grown and farmed product. and it contributes more to our local economy than any of these other foods that are shipped in like that. So I think that local farming is incredibly important, and I think we've got to have a healthy Verde River in order to continue to sustain those healthy farms, which are almost always in the alluvium of the Verde River, and they use the water out of the Verde River. I don't begrudge them a drop of it, by the way. I think that's an incredibly good use of Verde River water, and I'd like to see more of that local farming. So we're working on an agricultural code for Clarkdale. We've implemented parts of it that allow people to have things like grapes, which are very, very efficient from a water standpoint and add a lot to both our cachet and our economic development efforts. And I think encouraging the wine industry in the Verde Valley has been the number one wonderful thing that speaks to exactly this question.
Thank you. Robin.
Absolutely. I agree with Doug. Ordinances aren't going to do examples of what we can do, and I'd like the local farming is great, but how do we bring it to Clarkdale? How do we have places where local people, our residents, can go to get the local produce, the local meats, local baked goods and stuff? So I'd like to see us have sort of a buy local Clarkdale kind of concept, farmers market on a regular basis, community gardens. People are, with COVID-19 pandemic, everybody's trying to grow a garden. Some are having more success than others.
My gophers are really successful.
My lizards are loving my tomatoes at the moment for some reason. But a community garden where people who really know how to garden well can work with other people and have a bigger garden where we can do the food sharing of our fruits and vegetables, or have a system where we collect all the wonderful apples and apricots and peaches that some people don't pick off of their trees. How do we share that so that people who want that or need it can just come and get it? How we can start programs like that in Clarkdale. Things like that would be very important to us. The wine industry, I think our wine industry is our economic sort of focal point that we can really grow from. We're the center of it in the Southwest with the Southwest Wine Center in Clarkdale. We are the home of that. It is renowned in the whole wine industry. We see it growing. We have several wineries that have gotten started in Clarkdale. We need more. We can grow our economy with services and businesses that support that industry. And I see that as a big part of building the sustainable economy in Clarkdale.
Thank you. And I'm glad you're both keeping the animals happy. Robin.
Yes.
What are the two most important issues facing Clarkdale? Why? And how can the town council best address these issues?
I think one of the two most important issues for me is housing, the diversity of housing in Clarkdale. We've done really good over the years of in the most recent years of doing housing that is single-family housing. And that's fine and that's wonderful, but it's only for a certain group of people that can afford to buy those houses. We need housing for all, to have a diverse and growing Clarkdale of families, of people of all ages. We need nice and housing that is like apartments or tiny homes, or the kind of housing for somebody who doesn't want to buy a house or can't afford it, but want to live in Clarkdale. That is our roots. That's what we were about, is to have a place where everybody could come and live here and that the housing would be available for them. To me, that is one of my most important issues. The other one for me is economic development, growing our businesses. We have yes, we see a few businesses, people say a few businesses around Clarkdale. We actually have quite a few businesses. We have a very, I believe, a large home-based business environment in Clarkdale that we haven't even begun to explore what kinds of services and businesses and goods that they have in Clarkdale that we could support and grow there, and they might become bigger businesses, maybe businesses that we see like Molding Graphics or Bent River Machines that do precision machining. We have several of those. So let's look at what we have and how we can grow those to fit Clarkdale. Those are the ones that fit here because they are here, and that's the kind of economic development I'd like to see.
Thank you. Doug?
Yeah, so the two that Robin mentioned were two of the four that I wrote down while we were talking too.
So you get to do the other two.
Yeah, I'll do the other two. Right.
Thank you.
I absolutely agree that housing and affordable housing is one of the big things. We're working on that everywhere in the Verde Valley right now, trying to figure out where these people are going to live, where we're going to have our workforce housing, and how we're going to get that built. You know, who's going to build it? How are they going to afford it? All of those things we're working on as a region right now. So definitely a big thing. The other economic development, clearly for Clarkdale, is something that we need to pay a tremendous amount of attention to. We've got to bring more retail somehow into the town that pays sales tax, more of the tourist industry. Those kinds of things I think are super important. But let me talk about roads, because roads are something that people hardly ever think about until they hit a pothole. One of the things that people in municipal governance in Arizona say is our job is to fix potholes. And they mean that literally.
Literally.
Yeah. Because potholes are what people call you about, and potholes are the biggest problem, metaphorically, of all of our infrastructure. As our roads are degrading in Clarkdale and everywhere else in the United States of America, they're quickly becoming beyond the point of repair. When that happens, when that deferred maintenance catches up with you and you've not really taken care of your roads all that time because people don't want to pay the taxes that it's required to do that, you're going to lose those roads entirely. They're going to have to be re-dug up and new roads put in, which is 5, 6, 7 times as expensive as taking care of the roads that you have today. And that's a huge looming problem in Clarkdale and everywhere else in Arizona. Water is always going to be one of our big challenges in the future. We're using right now in the Verde Valley about as much water as we can without harming the Verde River. And we cannot continue to do that sustainably.
Thank you. Okay, Doug, what is your background in finance? If elected to the position of mayor, what steps will you take to ensure that Clarkdale remains financially stable during these challenging and uncertain times?
Yeah, you know, I have to say I'm very proud of Clarkdale and how it has operated its finances over the last 16 or 20 years that I've been involved one way or another. Not because of me, wholly, but because we've had excellent town councils. We've had very smart people both in our finance department and in our management positions in Clarkdale. We're incredibly creative when it comes to financing, and we have always operated in a way that the auditor comes in every year and he says, you guys are doing a great job. There are always a couple of nitpicky little things, let's move this over here, but never do they have any major problems with any of our audits. So you look at Kathy Schwick, that's our finance director right now, who now when she talks to the council believes her because they know that she's a professional and that what she says is absolutely true. Tracy, our town manager, backs that up with her expertise and her long history in municipal finance and municipal governance. And then we have a very long-serving, very stable town council. They've been through innumerable financing and budgetary sessions where they know what needs to be done in Clarkdale by this time. And I'd like to see that kind of a thing continue unabated as much as possible. That experience in municipal finance, that attention to the detail of how money is spent and how it's brought into the revenues of the town is incredibly important. And I know new time council people always have a hard time of understanding what's going on. It's just so many words for a while. But by now, our town council and our management in town are all municipal finance experts. And I think that's what we can continue in order to have our finances continue to be as stable as they have been.
Great, thank you. Robin.
Having a professional staff that understands financing and is extremely important to Clarkdale, and I've been very impressed over the years with the different people who have run our, who have overseen our finances, and we've done it in a very, I believe, a very prudent way, and that's what I would like to see happen over as we go forward, and it will be because we've always in Clarkdale for many years, at least in my time here, struggled with having enough money to get everything done. And we are creative and we are adaptable. Those are things that we are known for. I think a term was always called, we can do it the Clarkdale way. We'll figure it out and get it done. And make sure we're using our finances very, very wisely. Having a professional staff is what makes it doable. I have been there and been a part of many budget presentations. I've looked at the budgets. I have a fairly good understanding, not a big background in financial world, but I understand enough about municipal government to learn more about it. How is that? But I have had experience with organizations and their finances. As chair of Verde Valley Regional Economic Organization, we manage over a $750,000 revolving loan fund, and we have to deal in financial contracts all the time, lease agreements and amortization schedules, and how are we going to pay those things back. So I do have an understanding of what it takes to run an effective and profitable organization.
Great, thank you. Okay, Robin. We have seen a growing trend at the state level to disempower local governments and tie our hands regarding things like short-term rentals, cellular towers, and more. What do you feel is the best way to handle this going forward?
Be actively involved at the state level with legislation that tries to hamper how municipalities work. It's very curious in Arizona. I am always amazed. We have a current legislature, and we've had for many, many years, that really dislikes federal overreach, where the federal government would tell them what to do, and yet they turn around and they say that back to the local municipalities in the county. They overreach a lot with us. We see this all the time. We've seen it with plastic bags. We've seen it with campaign finance laws. We've seen it. Don't do anything we don't want you to do at the state level, or we will come after you. So that means we have to be actively involved in any legislation that would be negatively affect our local municipality by overreach by the state. Getting to know your legislators, working through the League of Town and Cities, and I applaud Doug for his leadership at that level. I too have had work at the state level. I know these legislators, and I know that it's, always get your way, but you work very hard on behalf of your community at the state level.
Great. Thank you. Doug.
You know what the problem is, Mary, is that
why don't you tell me, Doug?
What's the problem, Doug?
I've given this some thought too. And it really, as the president of the League of Cities and Towns and being on their executive committee now for, 12, 13 years, the League of Cities and Towns' primary responsibility, its number one job, is always to maintain cities' right to govern themselves, and not to have the legislature or the governor or even the federal government intrude upon that any more than is absolutely unavoidable. What happens with the legislature is pretty clear to me, and that is that they can't solve the state's problems, and so they start turning to city and town problems, you know? And they all think that they know exactly what needs to be done in Clarkdale. They've never been here. They've never set foot in the town. They don't know anything about our roads. They don't know anything about our schools. They don't know anything about our river. But they feel qualified. By the way, I have to say, the three legislators that we have operating in the Verde Valley and in Clarkdale, House members and senators, have never been here.
That's right.
They don't come here.
That's right, they don't.
They don't meet with me. They don't come and say, how can we help? They want to tell you how to run your city. And so our job is always to intervene in that process as much as we possibly can, and our belonging to the League of Cities and Towns and my particular station with the League of Cities and Towns has helped Clarkdale be a little more effective than the average small town can normally be. I know how to deal with the legislature. I know how to deal with the governor. I've done it for years and years through the League as the president. So I think that having that kind of a leadership in Clarkdale is the number one thing that we can do to keep that from propagating any more than is absolutely essential.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll have our final question. Doug, how do you see the town growing and changing in the future? Ideally, what would that look like? Realistically, what do you anticipate? What is the most important issue that needs to be addressed or changed that could occur? And finally, what is your vision for Clarkdale 20 years from now?
My vision is really easy. It's really clear. One of the things that I tell people all the time is we don't live in Clarkdale because we're too stupid to live in Phoenix. We live in Clarkdale because we like small towns. We like small towns because they have low crime, they have night skies, they have walkability, they have community events. They can walk around the town park and that Norman Rockwell, again, gazebo right in the middle of it. And they feel at home in Clarkdale. They feel like this is a community that's supportive of them and their needs. And it's just a wonderful place to live. That's the community that I see in 20 years. I don't see Clarkdale selling out at any time in the future. And by selling out, I mean rampant sprawl, growth for growth's sake, which Bob Rothrock used to say is the philosophy of the cancer cell. But I think that growth is going to happen slowly and in a measured, intelligent way that takes into account our natural resource allocations and how we can distribute those natural resources in the most equitable way. I think that economic development is going to be organic, and I think it's going to lead us in 20 years to having a completely sustainable town that is going to be the envy of everybody else in the Southwest. That's what we're working toward now. That's what we've been working toward for the last 20 or 25 years in various ways. We'll continue that effort, but the number one thing, again, is don't sell it out. Don't give it away. It's too precious. This small town atmosphere that we have, the small town cachet cannot be sold out and destroyed by rapid growth.
Thank you. Robin.
My vision of Clarkdale is always to be this wonderful small town community that I came to 23 years ago. A welcoming community for all, a community that can take care of itself. That it has not only a place for people to live, but has a place for people to be able to work and to continue to play. Because we do play well in Clarkdale, we really do. That's one of the things, we like to have fun. And I don't see us ever selling out to development. Development will comes and we take care of it and we accommodate it. We don't sprawl. We haven't sprawled. All the development of today is development within our borders that we have. Our businesses will, I think we will be a lot more than just organic. We need to be a little bit more deliberate on what we want it to be. We want it to be a place where we have businesses that can be supported by those who live there, and that it's useful to them. It's supportive of their needs. We need to have a place, and so it's going to be a little bit mixed, but we need to have a strong vision that's built on our history. Our history, not just of our smelter history, but also the history of the people who lived there before us. We have a downtown that can be charming and wonderful. We need to have that clear vision so those who want to live here see that and want to be a part of it, and those who want to invest here understand what that vision is for us. I see us as a small town. It's my small town. It's our small town. I love our small town spirit in Clarkdale.
Thank you. And now we will go to the closing statements by our candidates, and Robin will be the first. And you have 2 minutes, Robin.
All I can say is thank you very much to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum. It's been a wonderful discussion. Because of COVID-19, it's been really hard for Doug and I to have an opportunity to really talk about the things that are important to all of us in our community. And I love the questions from my neighbors and friends. That's been really impressive. And a lot more thought-provoking than sometimes I have seen before, and it challenges me. I do not have all the answers. I do have the commitment to Clarkdale. I've given my commitment to Clarkdale for all my many years. I've been involved in boards and commissions and organizing events and running a business in Clarkdale. In this time of COVID-19, it is challenging for voters to get out and talk to each other. Talk to the candidates running for office. So having this opportunity, as I said, has been important. I hope all of this helps you, the voter, make an informed decision on the best candidate to be mayor of Clarkdale. I know it's been a great experience for me to hear from everybody, to hear these questions, your concerns and issues. I've been walking the communities, casually talking to people about those, so I've been really excited about that. I believe I am the best choice for Clarkdale right now. I know my community, I have a vision of where I want to go, and I ask you, the voter, for your vote for me as mayor of Clarkdale on the August 4th primary ballot. Thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you, Robin. Doug.
Well, thank you, Mary, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for the opportunity again. This, as Robin said, is one of the few opportunities where we get to actually come out and hash over some of these things. What I've been impressed about today during this forum is how many times Robin congratulated the town of Clarkdale on how well it's doing things. And that's my primary goal, is just to continue that excellence in governance that Clarkdale has experienced. Again, not solely because of me, but as its leader, to some extent helping guide it along in that way. But we've had a series of stable, excellent counselors in the town of Clarkdale that's really the envy of a lot of cities and towns in Arizona. I got to study how cities and towns operated when I was the league president. And I was always talking to mayors and council people that were distraught over how their community was fighting with itself or wasn't really operating correctly. And I never could join into that discussion other than to help them understand from our model how it works for us. We have the most wonderful people in Arizona live in Clarkdale. They give us one of the biggest per capita volunteer bases anywhere, and Robin's an excellent example of that. She's been on many, many boards and commissions and done a lot of volunteer work in Clarkdale, and so have a lot of other people. But again, the town is its people. Its people are the best. I love Clarkdale. I would like to remain its mayor in order to continue that excellent governance that we've experienced for the last 16 years. And I tell you, when I was elected the first time, I said I will be the hardest working mayor Clarkdale has ever said, and I'll make that pledge again today, that I will continue to be the hardest working mayor that Clarkdale's ever had, if you'll give me your vote and your confidence.
Thank you. Well, I would like to personally thank Robin Prudenbauer and Doug Von Goseck for your participation in this forum. It's been a privilege to hear both of you presenting your ideas of becoming mayor and what you can do for a community that you both love very much. That was purely evident. I would like to remind all of the voters that Election Day for the primary election is August 4th. The last day to register to vote or change your party registration or update your address is July 6th. If you are not registered, please go to www.servicearizona.com. Also, please be sure to sign up for permanent early voting list to get your ballot in the mail. Thank you for your attention, and again, it was a privilege to meet with both of you. Thank you,
Mary.
Mary.